there's good on the basketball court, and then there's good trouble, as John Lewis used to advocate for. Get yourself into some good trouble. And Vinnie Goodwill, I'm just minding my own damn business on Saturday, taking my family to the movies, and my phone blows up because a couple of people tell me, hey, there was some reporter who asked Joe Mazzulla a question, and Mazzulla gave a really awkward answer. I said, some reporter. Then I see the clip, and I said, that's Vinnie Goodwill. Vinnie Goodwill asking Joe Mazzulla about the significance. And not just Joe Mazzulla, by the way. You asked Adam Silver. You asked Jason Kidd. You asked Joe Mazzulla about the significance. The NBA, coaches, two. Okay, we have it. I don't have to set it up. Here's Vinnie Goodwill asking Joe Mazzulla this question and getting this very, very interesting answer. Here we go.
Hey, Joe, Vince Goodwill, Yahoo Sports. For the first time since 1975, this is the NBA Finals where you have two black head coaches. Given the plight sometimes of black head coaches in the NBA, do you think this is a significant moment? Do you take pride in this? How do you view this, or do you not see it at all?
I wonder how many of those have been Christian coaches.
Okay, so that was the answer from Joe Mazzulla. It kind of hangs there. My first question is, what did you think of the answer, and why was there no follow-up?
Well, for one, I was caught off guard. To be perfectly honest with you, I wasn't expecting, that one, right? And a lot of times you will give someone, as a reporter, you will give someone the space, like to take a beat, right? They will maybe take a dramatic pause to catch themselves, to gather themselves, and extrapolate. So you don't want to interrupt someone while they're in mid-thought, or you don't want to, you know what I'm saying? I want to give them the real estate to do that, especially in something where you're talking about religion, where like if I knew I was going to bring religion into the conversation, I would have had a follow-up to it. But since he brought religion to the party, he didn't talk about how religion or faith or whatever he terms it helped him in his walk as a head coach, helped him in his walk, in his plight, in his own plights in this situation, in the circumstances that he took over the job. He issued the statement as a diversionary tactic, which is fine. If you don't want to talk about feeling, the blackness or whatever it is, if you don't see it that way, so be it. We ask for authenticity, right? We ask questions because we want authentic answers. And I asked Jason Kidd an authentic question. He gave me an authentic answer. Same thing with Adam Silver. Joe Mazzulla, I don't know if he gave me an authentic answer. I think he gave me a statement that was meant to shut down any conversation, because had I wanted to be a smartass there, right? Because like I know, we have cards in our back pocket, right? We have cards, and we can say, hey, Joe, what were the circumstances surrounding you embracing Christianity? Or why, Joe, are you unwilling to talk about race? I asked you a question about being black. What does that mean to you? If it doesn't mean something to you, then say it, right? There's a million things that could have been done, but I would have looked like I was trying to use the bully pulpit in that way, right? And you don't want to come across as a media person like you're bullying someone. You present the question, you give them the space to answer, they answer, you moved on. And just because you're being authentic doesn't mean that I don't have my own questions and how I choose to write it and frame it. I just found it very curious, especially in Boston, especially in the NBA that's predominantly black. And if it's the first time since 1975 that you've had two black coaches, that means something to people. Whether Joe Mazzulla likes it or not, he will be symbolic for something in the future, just like he was symbolic for all the people in my mentions yesterday and today, my mentions on Instagram, my private messages, all this other stuff. And don't get me wrong, when you put race and religion together, that is a bonfire. right?
Yeah, I mean,
But guess,
race,
but Michael Holley,
religion, politics. Yeah, you throw it all in there. Yep.
but here's the crazy thing. People are treating me like, I guess, like I'm sort of heathen. They even never asked what type of relationship, what type of my own relationship that I have, right? They don't. But they just think that you're attacking religion because I dare try to extrapolate on something that Joe didn't, because Joe left everything open to interpretation. He let everybody be able to misappropriate his words and co-opt his words. And maybe that's what he wanted, right? Maybe he'd rather be co-opted than actually address the actual question at hand. And if that's the case, so be it.
Yeah, you said you look for authentic answers. That's right. Exactly. It makes sense to me. When you do ask questions, a lot of times people rush into it. They're afraid of the silence. So even if it's, and the silence, when you ask the question, 5 seconds of silence sometimes feels like 25 seconds. It feels like 35 seconds. It's not. You got to train yourself. You got to discipline yourself to just sit there and be like, I'm uncomfortable with it. I'll wait until I get an answer. And so I agree with your approach there. And I also agree with your statement of authenticity. And I think he gave you, if authenticity is a house, he allowed you into the foyer and no further. And this is what it is. There, for some reason, he's uncomfortable talking about it. Now, I don't know what that reason is, but clearly he's uncomfortable talking about it. Why is he uncomfortable talking about it? Is he uncomfortable because he feels like race should not be a part of it? Is he uncomfortable because he sees himself differently than the way you described? That could be it. Is he uncomfortable because this is not the time for it? Whatever it is, there's some discomfort with Joe Mazzulla in this topic. And I don't understand, and maybe you can help me understand. You talk about your mentions. Why do people think that this was an attack on faith, specifically Christianity? How was this an attack? He says, I wonder how many of them were Christian coaches. Now, first of all, before I even get into the content of it, how about the numerology? We're only talking about 2 coaches. I mean, like, if I'm taking it literally, grammatically, it doesn't make sense. It's Casey Jones, right? It's Casey Jones and Al Attles.
Yep.
So how many of those coaches? You talking about 2 dudes? And like, so if I'm breaking it down literally, and literalists will ruin America, they really will. So I'm not gonna be that. I'm not gonna be that guy. Are you saying, was Casey Jones a Christian? Was Al Attles a Christian? Like, what? That doesn't even make sense. But okay,
right.
Grammar aside, let's just move grammar to the side. I'm just trying to connect what he's trying to say, and how would people take that as you attacking Christianity when you didn't even bring it up? What are they saying to you? What are people saying in the mentions? I just don't get it. What's their issue?
There's a whole bunch of hard ERs in my mentions.
Oh, from the Christians.
Beta, yeah. From the so-called Christians, child of God, from people who have the American flag or dog abbeys. Now, mind you.
Okay.
Let's be clear. Let's be clear on a bunch of this stuff, right? These are either people who don't read, people who can't read, people who cannot contextualize, or they're probably not even real people. Like, we know that Twitter has become a farm of trolls. You know what I mean? We've seen this dating back to the 2016 election. So I don't want to get so wrapped up in arguing with fake people. You know what I mean? Like, people who are not actually real. Like, they're just pressing the button. Like, there's things that come up when you look at their, profiles. You're like, oh, this isn't a real person. Or maybe this is their backup account or whatever the case may be, like that sort of thing. But never in my piece that I wrote, the accompanying piece that I wrote for Yahoo Sports, people were saying, why does everything have to be about race? Or you're turning everything into a race hustle. I wasn't the person who turned this into that. This was going to be a simple off-day story, just talking about how far the league has come, how Adam Silver feels about it, how Jason Kidd feels about it. You don't know how these figures feel about it. And had I not asked Joe Mazzulla, a 35-year-old Black and Italian man, you know what I mean? A man who has a black, clearly black genes and Italian genes, how it feels, then I'm making that decision for him, right? And we're told, as journalists, never make a decision for your subject. Never assume. So even though I asked Adam Silver and gave me a great answer, Jason Kidd gave me a great answer, let me ask Joe Mazzulla about this. Let me just see. I'm just trying to complete the story and figure out, okay, once I get this answer, I'll go where I'll go. So getting this answer completely changed the tone of what I was going to write, and thus introduced all the bad actors, right? The right-wingers, the ultra-religious folks, when I actually attacked none of those people. I didn't even attack white folks in my piece. I said Boston has an ugly history of race, which they do, right? For whatever reason, Boston seems to ignore. It's almost like, when will you let it go? When y'all acknowledge it? You know what I mean? Like, when will you stop? When will you stop talking about, the funny thing for me, Michael, is people will say, if you just stop talking about race, it'll go away. Is that the world I live in?
And also,
is that the world you live in?
No, it's not. And here's the thing: this city, which I love, Boston, this city is distinct for many reasons, but one of them is that it is a historical place. So Boston, there's a whole cottage industry off of history. I mean, there's a Freedom Trail. You go down around the North End. There's Paul Revere's house. There are all these historical Bunker Hill. There are all these historical places. And yet, when you talk about the history of race in Boston, some people will come to you and say, well, why are you bringing it up? Well, why are you bringing up other things? So you can only bring up history that you have made money off of, or history that you think is appropriate. But if it's history that tends to frame Boston in a light that you don't want it to be in, you say that's the past. Well, it's all the past. A lot of it's the past. Hey, this city's been around since 1635. There's a lot of history here that we talk about. Good, bad, neutral, ugly. Why can't we
talk about it elsewhere? And here's my thing, Michael. Not to cut you off, because I want you to keep cooking.
Yeah.
Why can't we talk about it in Detroit? We talk about in Detroit the race riots of 1967, right?
Yeah.
That basically turned the city from city against suburb, right? Basically started everything. There was a whole freeway created in Chicago that instituted redlining during that era. Every other city can acknowledge and talk about, maybe not talk about it proudly, maybe it's in corners of restaurants that you don't like to talk about. You like me on that wall, you need me on that wall. Why can't we discuss it, talk about it whenever it comes up? Nobody's saying it's Tuesday, let's just bring up Boston's ugly racial history. But if something like that, if the subject, I don't say demands it, but if the subject of the day sort of brings about, hey, we can have this conversation in a way. Like the thing with D. Brown getting pulled over in 1990 and Wellesley, or what is that what it's called? Wellesley?
Wellesley.
Yep, right.
Happened in Wellesley.
Right? When that happened and people, like, why would you bring it up? Why would I bring it up? It happened. You know what I mean? It legit happened. Go look it up. Like, police pulled guns on him and his fiance at the time because they thought he was a bank robber. Right? You want to pretend that stuff doesn't happen, and it doesn't. I'm not saying people today in 2024 have to account for what happened in 1990. That's ridiculous. But it is part of the fabric of how a city looks at itself and how the world looks at a city. And when you bring the NBA finals to this city again, because we might wind up being here again, and it's two black coaches, of course, all these things come into play. It's not blame, it's acknowledgement, it's color, it's texture.
Well, I got a few things before we take a break. A few things I think you'll enjoy. Number one, I think Joe Mazzulla will revisit that topic. Maybe not with you, but he does a radio interview in Boston weekly. I think he'll revisit the topic. I think he will eventually elaborate. I think he'll elaborate on it in some way. That's my prediction. That's one. Two, it's interesting. Now, you'll love this one. D. Brown loves Boston. He loves Boston. But at the time, he was not loving Boston when that happened. The enjoyment part, and we can look back with a smile because, everything, it did not turn into what it could have been a lot worse. But the police said they were looking for somebody. And D. Brown was the suspect. I just want to point out to you that the suspect was Michael Smith's complexion. And D. Brown is my complexion. And so they confused the person they were looking for with D. Brown. Now, isn't that crazy?
Oh, so you mean the suspect was between 5'2" and 7'9"? Is that what you're saying? A wide spectrum.
Hey, like the whole service thing. Hey, we'll be there between like 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. Just somewhere in there. Just be ready between 8 and 2. Somebody
and to be funny. Here's the be fun thing, Michael Holly, and I mean this. There were some really cool black spots, or just spots. There's some areas, great areas. Like there's a particular restaurant that we would go to in what you would call Black Boston. Is closed, I guess, for remodeling right now. And
yep.
Gary Washburn from the Boston Globe, he had another few spots for us to go to. Had a great time. You know what I mean? Good people around, haven't really experienced anything negative, haven't had anybody. Look, I'm not Kyrie Irving. Anybody walking up to me saying, F you, Vinny, like that ain't really how like my experience in Boston is. So I can crack a joke and everything else about my time. But I've had a good time here. And I know a lot of people like you who love this city. I get that. I appreciate that.
All right. And here's the final thing. This is what I would have said to Joe Mazzulla. I would have gone in a different direction. I would say, Joe, since 1975, this is the first time since 1975 that 2 black head coaches have been leading their teams in the NBA Finals. And just like in 1975, this series is going to end in a sweep, just like it did in 75. That's the only reason. That's the only reason I'm bringing it up. It's going to end in a sweep, just like it did then. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back. I think we're going to talk.
That's cute.
I think we're going to talk to Natalie Esquire about some issues, basketball issues, some good stuff. It's going to be a sweep, by the way. I told you Celtics in 5. I'm going off that. It's a sweep.
Oh, I like it.
Hey, thank you for watching Brother from Another. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, go ahead and do that now. Don't forget, you can catch us 3 to 4 weekdays on PeacockTV.com and on Sirius XM Channel 85.